Early contests build momentum for 2024 contenders seeking the White House. C-SPAN offers unfiltered coverage of events leading into early primaries and caucuses. Get access to speeches and results with the free app, C-SPAN Now, or watch live on the C-SPAN networks.
Way back in 2005, two brothers set off on a road trip that would save the world and change television.
Ernie and Bert?
No. For 15 seasons and 327 episodes, Supernatural took audiences on a wild ride of family, fate, and faith with a rocking soundtrack and a seriously cool car.
But that was then, Bobo, and this is now. And yes, the show has quote-unquote ended, but we're not quite done with the journey.
No, we're not.
And that's why we're watching it all over again, or for Rob and me, for the first time,
That's right.
Diving deep into every episode of Supernatural with the fine folks who made it. And we're taking you along for the ride.
Whether you like it or not. I'm Rob Benedict. I played Chuck Shirley, a.k.a. God.
Spoiler.
Yeah, it is a bit of a spoiler, but hey, spoilers are fair game here.
Fine. And I'm Richard Speight Jr., and I played the Trickster, also known as the Archangel Gabriel, and I did a little bit of Loki work in there.
Okay, you know we're running out of time.
Okay, well, we'll be talking about the entire series, so whatever we say, accept it. You've been warned.
So buckle up and settle in.
Because this, my friend, is Supernatural, then and now.
Hey everybody, it's Rob Benedict.
Hi, my name is Richard Speight.
And we are talking about Supernatural Season 2, Episode 15, Tall Tales.
This is an episode that a lot of people feel is the tentpole episode. The episode that they knew would make or break the show. They all hung their hats on this episode. And there is a school of thought that they hit such a peak here with such excellence. They could have literally wrapped up shop right after this and have accomplished really wonderful things in the pantheon of television accomplishments.
See, I thought they really phoned it in. It was a snoozer. No, I'm just kidding. No, it was it was great. Hey, before we get into it, keep an eye out for updates on Instagram and Twitter at SPN Then and Now.
Yeah, you got to do it. Kids, you know you're on social media. Just go over there and follow SPN Then and Now on Instagram and Twitter. I don't mind reading these announcements, but Rob's tired of reminding you. He's over it. So just save Rob the agita and go do it.
No, it's really, I'm really getting tired of it. So listen, let's get into it. What was this throwaway episode all about?
Summarize it for us, Bobo.
All right, Sam and Dean head for Springfield State University.
I like it already. Ooh, this is going to be a good one.
To investigate the death of a professor who fell from his office, fell out the window. The circumstances of the professor's death match an urban legend about the campus being haunted.
Ooh.
The legend references a sixth floor, room 669, but the building the professor fell from only has 4 floors.
Wait a minute.
So the brothers pass by a very handsome and dashing janitor. It's written like that, and I had to read it, and it made me throw up a little bit in my mouth. Who mentions that he saw the professor go upstairs with a young girl.
Hold on, you skipped a part. Come on now. I'm reading the same thing. You skipped it. The brothers pass a very handsome and dashing janitor who looks like he was poured into those coveralls. Go on.
Well, yeah, who looks a little bit old to be cast as a younger janitor, but whatever. Who mentions he saw the professor go upstairs with a young girl. Things start to get weird when a frat guy claims to have been abducted and probed by aliens. Later, a researcher at the university who experiments on animals is killed by a sewer alligator. Classic urban legends seem to be happening for real. Anything at this point, Rich?
I'm still hung up on that dashing janitor.
You're like, I hope we go back to the janitor.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I was like, oh, it's a nice day player role. Well, while all this is escalating, Sam and Dean start bickering. Feeling they aren't making progress, they call Bobby for help. Bobby arrives at the motel where the boys explain. Bobby quickly realizes that they're dealing with a trickster, one of the greatest characters in all of Supernatural lore.
That is so true. Let's pause here and talk about how great that character is.
Do we have to?
Because that's one of those characters that you go, that's my point, is that you kind of feel like, well, this show is now a Sam Dean trickster show. Like, that's what this should be. That's what we're setting up here.
Are we? I mean, if you say so. They surmise that the trickster must be that handsome janitor from the beginning.
The one with the cut jaw who looked all ripped, like he had that coverall just spray painted on, that one?
Jeez. The brothers can't believe that such a handsome, charming, confident man could be behind this, but they finally acquiesce.
He does seem, when I watch this, he does seem a little hot to be in this mess. You know what I mean? It seems like he's such a smoke show.
I just kept thinking, man, he's old. He must be near death. The trickster witnesses his pursuers having an argument, and the trickster comes up with a plan to make an offer to one of the brothers that brother can't refuse. Dean is able to resist his generous offer of a comforting night with two ladies.
Yeah.
Suddenly, Dean's two accomplices, Bobby and Sam, arrive and attack the trickster, forced to defend.
Which seems weird if he just offered up a lovely evening with two gorgeous women. That seems weird to me that Dean wouldn't accept that.
Yeah, but they know what you are. They know what you really are. Forced to defend himself, the trickster conjures a maniac with a chainsaw to attack Sam and Bobby. That was a good one. Then the handsome trickster watches with amusement. In the chaos, Sam tosses Dean a steak, which he quickly drives into the handsome trickster's heart.
Oh my God.
Bobby, Sam, and Dean leave the building, satisfied they did their job. Inside the building, the handsome trickster's body starts to disappear as the real trickster approaches, eating a chocolate bar, his signature move.
Chocolate.
Happy he tricked the hunters into killing his illusion, though camera lingers on his rakish, weird, creepy smile. Wow. What a review. I mean, what a summary.
Well, let's dive into the review here. Stapleton on a Stapleton. If Chris Stapleton's beard had a fake beard on it that was modeled after his own Stapleton beard, Stapleton on a Stapleton, and it was stapled on, that's my review. A Stapleton stapled onto a Stapleton.
You know, people say a lot of things about you, Richard Speight, but small ego isn't one of them. No, listen, first time I'd seen this episode, a lot's been talked about it. I feel like I'd seen it. I was like, oh, I know this episode, but I hadn't. I hadn't really sat down to watch this episode. Great work from a young Richard Speight Jr. You really see, it's one of those things where you know, I'm taking myself, I'm looking at it as if I'm watching and don't know any of you. You right away, you can see why it's the same thing you feel when you saw Gabe Tigerman. You know what I mean? Like, I want to see this guy again. You know, you instantly like what you're up to, and it's such a fun character. And I like the way that they did the whole, what do you call that? Rashomon?
Although I realize that it's really not Rashomon, but yes.
What is Rashomon?
Rashomon is the same story told by multiple perspectives.
What does that come from, Rashomon?
The movie Rashomon.
I don't know that.
It's a reference to the movie Rashomon, which is sort of the movie that is the first movie to do that style filmmaking, where it's a film that tells the same story, and you learn more about what's going on in the story by watching the various perspectives to see if you can find out the truth.
I thought it was a Muslim holiday.
Rosh Hashanah, I think is...
no, that's a Jewish holiday.
Ramadan.
There you go. That's what I thought it was.
It's an Akira Kurosawa film, by the way. That's sort of like,
right.
For film buffs, it's like a high watermark in storytelling because of its multiple... It's
a Japanese movie.
Different culture, and then it's sort of multifaceted, multi-perspective way of telling the story.
Right. Well, anyway, to go back to my review, but thanks for that Google update. But
I had to look up Kurosawa. I was like, oh, I forgot the director, and I feel like a little boob here.
Yeah, he's a classic Japanese filmmaker. So you're great. It's great. The Rashomon thing that's not Rashomon was great. It's a classic. It's a freaking classic, and it's always on the top 20 lists, top 15, top 10 of many Supernatural fans.
I'll be able to say it's the one.
That's just your list, which you keep reposting. So anyway, I loved it. Loved you in it. And I get the full 70s Kenny Loggins.
Nice. I got a Loggins and a Stapleton stapled onto a Stapleton.
By yourself.
Hey, if you can't love yourself, Robbie, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So listen, our first guest is a man that you might know from
I'm excited about this
his 3 credits.
That's it.
Ernest Goes to Camp.
I loved it.
Demonic Toys.
A National Treasure.
And 1 episode of Matlock. Ladies and gentlemen.
Again, the episode of Matlock. A lot of people call it the episode of Matlock.
Richard Speight Jr. Rich, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Robert. It's a thrill to be here.
So excited to have you.
I'm so excited to be here. I carved out a little time for this. This is not my usual ritual, but it's such an honor to finally be invited to be a part of this podcast. Thank you. I appreciate it very much. This is just great.
Well, it was really hard to get you, and we had to go through lots of channels, but we know we only have you for a short time. But just thank you so much.
Were those changing channels?
Hey,
yeah.
So describe for our listeners what Matlock was.
Matlock was a scintillating, cutting-edge legal drama that starred a young up-and-comer of the time, Andy Griffith. And
Right.
he had he was sparks were flying whenever that man was on set,
Sure.
grilling defendants, and really a prosecutor for the people, we called him.
Yeah.
And he changed the way the legal profession is viewed. He's an Atticus Finch's Atticus Finch. You know what I mean?
Sure. And is that late 80s?
That was 1946. TV had just, we weren't quite color yet.
Right, but we had done sound.
We were just getting into the talkie version of
But
entertainment.
in all seriousness, how old were you when you did Matlock? Because that was a show
I was
from
in
the late
college.
80s.
I was in college.
Yeah.
I was like a sophomore in college. Like I think it was like
You're-
1990.
I always forget that about you, that you're like Corey Feldman, you were a child actor.
Shirley Temple? Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
I'm very much a child actor. A child
Corey
star.
Feldman. And Shirley Temple.
A child star, really.
Yeah, you were.
A big young career as a young man, and that's what has led to this gilded life I lead. You know what I mean?
Okay, so what was it? I've heard you tell some of these stories before on stage, but tell the listeners that haven't heard it. What was your intro? Now, this was an offer. They called you and they said, "Hey, we want you to play this role."
Right.
And did you know the show at all at this point?
Never heard of the show. True story. I got an offer. My agent called and said, "Hey, they want you. You got a phone call to play a janitor on a TV show." And I said, "Great. Yes." The answer is yes, because I was not fielding a bunch of offers in those days. I usually had to audition for stuff. So that was such a cool and refreshing event that I'm like, yeah, man, thrilled. I didn't realize that I wasn't just a janitor until I was flying to Vancouver and had the script in my hand and read it on the plane. And I was like, oh.
So what did you think?
I
You've
was
told
going
that
to play
story
a janitor.
before, and now I'm like, wait, what? Like, what did you think the part was?
Playing a janitor. I didn't know what Supernatural was. I figured, oh, I'm like the guy they think did the crime, but I didn't do the crime. Or I'm the guy who did the crime, but you don't realize that till the act 4 or whatever, you know.
Wow. And that's how, I mean, now I guess you get this, you might get the script just a few days before, but yeah, that's how little we know as guest stars. So then you get it and you read it and you realize you're not just a happy-go-lucky janitor. You're actually the trickster.
Right, man. And I was a trickster, and I was like, oh, this is kind of a fun episode. It leans a little more on the humor side. And again, this is another story I've told. But once I realized that, I thought, okay, I don't really know this show. I haven't watched this show. But when I get up there, all my questions will be answered because we'll do a table read. We'll have a conversation. I'll get a sense of the whole vibe. And so we go up to the show, to the production office, and we did a table read. And Eric Kripke was on speakerphone, and probably John, the writer, and probably Bob, but they were all on the speakerphone in the middle of the table. And it was Jared Jensen, Tom, I'm drawing a blank on his name, but the young man who played the guy who danced with the aliens.
Okay.
And myself, and Brad May, the director. And we did a table read. And then after the table read, literally the only adjective Eric Kripke used to describe anything was supernatural. And I kid you not. So I was so confused. He was like, okay, guys, I know this isn't your typical Supernatural episode. So let's have some supernatural fun with it, but be sure to keep the supernaturalness there. And I want you to be sure. And I'm like, I need something other than the word supernatural to describe this thing, because I'm not coming off, a season and a half of knowing what the hell we're doing. And it was really funny to me. I'm like, this is almost like they're pranking me, because they're not using any adjectives or nouns other than supernatural. There's a supernatural-esque vibe to this one, so keep that in mind. But then we'll veer off that a little bit to have like a sort of hyper supernatural feel. And then we'll come back down to sort of the supernatural, ground floor. And I'm like, what are we doing? What kind of show is this? And meanwhile, Bradford May, it was his first episode. So he hadn't done 4,
Right.
And I was like, this is going to be really interesting. And the first thing I shot, day 1, was me sitting in the auditorium, like the most talking I do.
Oh.
So the biggest thing I did was the
reveal.
that day. Yeah. So, and the first angle was on me. They started on me day one, shot one.
Whoa.
And I remember going, well, I have an idea of what this is. I'm just going to do this thing. Yeah. Because there's like it's all scripted, but there's also some improv stuff like where I have to like be watching what's happening to Dean on the bed, and I'm just making all that up and doing, a series of reactions. And I just remember doing all these things going, man, I hope I'm in the ballpark here.
Yeah.
It is. And it's classic sort of TV where you're not getting a ton of notes from the director really, which is just sort of the way that job goes when you're a guest actor. And I remember thinking, I'm just throwing it against the wall here.
Yeah.
I hope something sticks.
Yeah. It's so fun. I mean, it really is like and the thing is, it does work, and it's not like anything we've seen yet. So you're kind of creating it. What you're doing is then becomes the standard for what that tone is for this show.
Well, it was cool, man. And that like what we always say, we've been interviewing people for a season and a half of podcast here, and people have heard us talk to Brad Kreezer and Robin Props and all these people. And we all say, oh, day one, you were so cool. But the fact of the matter is, day one, they were very cool. I can not really tell you the name of a lot of people I worked with as a guest star. But right after that episode, I could tell you Jeannie Chow's name. I could tell you Brad Kreezer. I could tell you Robin Props. I still don't know Robin Props' last name because she keeps changing it. So it's Props as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
But like, because I was spitting a candy bar into a bucket between takes, she and I bonded immediately. And it was just such a nice, friendly group that like immediately you got on with people. Lou Bolo, like immediately you got on with people out of the gate that it made that show so unlike most shows. You just don't come away with a couple of phone numbers in your phone from the experience. It just doesn't happen.
Right.
And it happened on that show. And I think that also manifests itself in a guest star, me, later you, later Mark Pellegrino and everybody else, feeling comfortable to do their job because they feel the support of the group around them. Yeah. It's not like, oh, who's the new guy? I don't know. Let's pound him out of here so we can focus on number one and number two. That's not how they focus there. Right. That's not how they play ball. They really do give everybody their equal time. When I was doing my takes, it wasn't like they plowed through them really fast. I got my shot to do my thing. Yeah. And a lot of respect given to the guest stars. And everything you said just now is really true, except I disagree with the fact that every job you do, you walk away with phone numbers. You're just that kind of guy. You walk away with like 2 or 3 best for new votes. New votes for office. You might not be wrong. I am a little bit that type of guy, but I will say this. This is going back a while, right? Like, so we're 17 years or 15. Well, right. We barely have cell phones at this 17 point. Years ago. Yeah. Which is not that it wasn't the keep in touch era as much. True. Absolutely. So do you remember meeting J&J? Do you remember what's your meeting Jared and Jensen's story? I remember meeting them going to the table read because I was. By the way, table read at Supernatural. Like we never. I know, right? Yeah. Did you ever do that? No. I think it petered out shortly thereafter, but they were still doing them then. And I went to the office, the production office, and they were obviously shooting a different episode and were coming over to do this. And Jared had stolen an alien head that went up yay high, and he had put it on, and he was sprinting through the halls, I think being chased by crew members or by Jensen, I can't remember. But he's obviously already 6'4". With the alien head, he's about 6'9". Oh, my God. And he was sprinting through, running up and down the halls, and I immediately knew, well, this is the lead guy in the show because you have a bunch of, grips and then you have a runway model. You're like, well, that guy's probably the actor here. And he's running around and then Jensen's chasing him and they're sweaty and goofing around and sprinting back and forth. And I remember thinking, these are either fun-loving guys or idiots. I don't know. I guess we'll find out. Both are true. It turns out both are true. Because I didn't know if they were going to be like, man, this is just the honest truth. I go into a situation like that where I'm doing a show that has 2, dashing leads. And it wasn't my first rodeo. I've been doing it for a decade. And I'm like, I know the how the road is paved. I'm like, these guys are either going to be complete and utter douchebags or they're not. Mm-hmm. And I always assume douchebag. That way I don't get my feelings hurt. I don't get, I just kind of say to myself and don't put myself out there so that I don't get mowed over or put down or, belittled in some way that so many lead actors like to do. Yeah. And that's just the ugly truth of it. That's the life of a guest star is usually getting sort of knocked around a little bit. You kind of have to just roll the punches and go with it. And I just assumed this would be that. And the table read, I didn't really have an opinion either way. They were fun and goofing around. So I'm like, well, that's cool. They look like they're having fun with each other, but I didn't really talk to them.
Interesting.
We ended up talking. My conversations with them were, they sort of met a makeshift green room over there at the campus where we were doing that first day of shooting. And we ended up talking a little bit of football because USC and Texas were big rivals back then. I went to USC and they didn't go to UT, but they were UT fans.
Right. Is it true you watched a Cowboys game?
Later on, they ended up, once they realized I liked football, because I think Vince Young had just beaten USC in the national championship or something along those lines where it had been a big deal. And so we were talking about that and they were lording that over me. And then later on in our life on the show, they knocked on the trailer door and invited me to come in and watch a little bit of a Dallas game on TV, which I thought was incredibly friendly. Again, not the normal guest star treatment, very friendly. Not unique to me. They were like that to everybody, but I didn't know that at the time. And I thought that was really remarkable. The other thing, the moment that I always found remarkable, or that is memorable for me in our meeting, was that they're so tall. And that's just not common in the world of actors. It's just not, and I at the same time I did that show, I was working on Jericho, and Jericho had a couple of tall people. Skeet Ulrich is not short.
Oh, really?
Brad Byers kind of tall. Yeah, there's some kind of tallish guys in the 6 feet, but not 6'4". But they're tall. So but the show I was currently doing, I was like, I'm around tall guys. Then I go to this show and I'm like, holy crap. Yeah. Where they literally had to put me on an apple box to be in a 3-shot with everybody, which I'd never had before.
Yeah, I'm Mr. Applebox.
Yeah, and I'm not tall. I'm 5'8". So it's not like I'm used to being as tall as people. I'm used to being shorter than people, but that was dramatic. And I remember going to at one point sitting in the chair. And again, I wasn't joking around with these dudes very much. They were very polite, very nice guys. I was polite back, and that was our rapport. But I was sitting in the chair, and Jensen was sitting there, and we were there for a while. And I said, just to break the silence, I said, hey, nothing for nothing, but you MFers are tall. Like, it's a real trip because you've been in TV and film for a while. You don't see a lot of tall guys, especially two of them. And he's like, yeah, dude. And he goes, I'm 6'1" and I'm the short one. He's like, it's strange. He's like, we, at that point, again, social media was not a thing. So they had Supernatural Magazine and Teen Beat and all the crap that they were being featured in. And he said, people will look at Jared and their brain will immediately make him 5'10". Like that's, you kind of go, well, he's probably, without even knowing a number, you just think he's your buddy in college's height. He's clearly a tall guy. He's 5'10", maybe 5'11". He's like, so they think I'm 5'7".
Right.
He's like, he's like, I'm referred to as the short one in the magazines.
Yeah.
And he's like, it's strange for me because I've always been kind of considered a tall guy. And they put on those Dean and Sam boots, which just for the people at home were not flip-flops. They were
They give him another inch and a half.
Yeah, marching boots. So, and they weren't giving me any lifts. So I went from 5'8" to 5'8" and an eighth. And they went from 6'1" to 6'2" and a half and 6'4" to 6'5" and a half with those shoes on. So I remember remarking about that to Jensen, and Jensen remarking about what that experience was like in so much as the way he was perceived, based on standing next to Jared every day on screen. I thought that was interesting.
Is there a line that you have in this episode? I swear you say something that's very Richard, like nothing for nothing. I feel like you have a little like Nashville type little like colloquialism in the beginning of when you're walking up the stairs and you're showing them. They come back to you after the first scene. They come back to you and you're showing them. So I think it's when they're on to you, and you walk them up the stairs, and then Sam hides somewhere. And I swear you say something like nothing for nothing. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do, but I can't remember if I made it up or not. Like I gotta go back and I gotta go back and watch. I don't take notes anymore, but I should have taken notes. But there's something very Richard about that moment, I thought. I did have some improv in that show, but not a ton. Like, I mean, it's very possible I could have added that in one of the takes. There was a lot of improv in that auditorium room, but I don't remember specifically that moment.
Well, there's so much, it's a great role for you because you have that little smile that your son Frank has. It's that same sort of like smile where you can charm a room, but also be fooling them at the same time. You're up to something. You're up to something. It's that what you just did. there's so much comedy in the episode. Was there a lot of laughing on set? Do you remember it being sort of a jokey set?
No, I remember it being a light set in that we weren't doing heavy drama, so the crew was lighter, and I think that facilitated my ability to meet and bond with the crew, is that we could sort of joke around a little bit.
Right.
We had a lot of bad weather too, which kind of slowed down shooting some, so we'd have some sit around time.
Wow.
I just remember also Jensen did his own stunt leaping onto the bed, like he did his own land on the springboard and land on the bed. I remember thinking that was cool. That was kind of light, which you can only do if you're not pressed for time. You can try to do those things.
Well, he's probably trying to impress those ladies.
Well, and I always said, I think one of the only other things I said to him at any point was, not a bad day at the office. His job was to leap up and be beaten senseless by two actresses who were lovely people, but also lovely physically. And it was, not a bad way to go to work, I guess, if you're Jensen actress.
Sure. What was your favorite scene to shoot? Probably the whipped cream with the ladies.
No, that honestly, dude, for all the joking we have, felt so uncomfortable being in boxers and a t-shirt. Like I just felt like a moron.
Yeah. Especially
when those dudes are also on the show. You're like, oh God.
I know.
I got the joke of it all, and it was fun. But I don't know why that kind of stuff just makes you uncomfortable. I'm a somewhere in my DNA. It's 1953, and I'm like, my knees are showing.
Look, dude, it's never comfortable to be in that situation on set. I don't think that ever gets comfortable.
Yeah. No, my favorite was the day one, the stuff of like when the trickster part comes out, when I'm no longer hiding anything and I'm just being snarky and I like you, man. We could do business, and all the stuff I have with Jensen, and the reveal of Sam and Jim Beaver trying to kill me, or Bobby Singer trying to kill me, and all that. I think that was my favorite part.
Yeah.
And I was also fascinated by it. I remember going like, how are they doing me, walking up on me and watching them how to do this move and then replicate the move. And I'm like,
how did they do that?
The old school way of like camera repetition, the sort of like they do the move, I leave, and I then walk forward as, with a non-bloody version of myself looking down, and they pan up and there I am. They had a body double, like a sort of a guy to be in the gray coveralls. For one piece, but that was the bit. And I remember going, oh, that's cool how they're making this.
Yeah.
I that was my favorite because that was the loosest I got to be. And again, I felt like it was going okay. Again, it wasn't like I got a round of applause, but you just kind of, how you can read a room. And you feel like what I'm doing is working, and Jensen was really cool about it. And I think we had a couple of chuckles at some stuff that I was yelling at him. And I'm sure there's some fun outtakes, not outtakes like bloopers, but Lord knows what I said. Just because I was saying anything, trying to not filter myself so they could cherry pick fun comments of them beating each other up.
That's cool.
That was my favorite day. And because of the bad weather, we were there a long time. I remember it being like, that's how I ended up getting to know Jeannie better, because you're just kind of sitting around and chatting with people. And it was cool.
Right. So in the script, it's obviously in the script that you come back, and I didn't honestly put this together until just now we were doing the synopsis. So the ultimate trick is that the trickster wasn't even the real you. Right. Like the trickster can project his persona elsewhere, so that you're seeing, like, when they finally stab me, I just tricked them into thinking they're stabbing me and then can show up later. Right. I guess I thought maybe you just can't kill the trickster, so he kind of comes back. I didn't realize that the joke is this joke on a joke, basically. So, and at this point, you obviously didn't, we know now that you went on to become Gabriel, and they didn't even call him Loki at this point, right? No. But you finished the script, you're on the plane, you finish the script, and it says to be continued. Did you think there's a chance you'd come back? Dude, I fell for it like every guest star ever fell for it in Supernatural. The fact that it says to be continued on it, and you've already made reference at one point that you had this experience. Of course I had that experience. I'm like, to be continued, and I'm alive? And you're alive, man. And of course, I was I thought I was going to be in the next one. I thought, I just read it as to be continued usually means we pick up that story where we left off. Yeah. And I thought, oh, dope, man. I'm going to score another episode here. Crickets. Just crickets. Tumbleweeds. Nothing. And then and then what? Then did you think like, oh, I guess that was it then? Yeah. I just assumed that was it. And then when I found out so I didn't know who my inside friend was who got me the job until later, when Guy B, who was directing Jericho,
showed me the crew list, and I saw Bob Singer's name. I'm like, oh, Bob Singer must be the reason why I'm doing this, because I had done a pilot for him in London that had been an awesome experience, but hadn't gotten picked up. And I thought, oh, well, Bob must be the friendly face here who gave me the job. So I emailed Bob to say, I believe I have you to thank for this experience, and it was an awesome experience. And this is a while later. So this is not the day I landed. Okay. We're talking
A few months later.
Oh, yeah. Exactly. And he said, glad you had a good experience because we're thinking about bringing you back. I'm like, oh, cool. And that was right before they did the mystery spot episode, I think. So, I mean, I'm telling you, I think I probably emailed Bob months later and heard back from him months later. Like, it wasn't like a quick exchange.
Right. Well, then you don't come back till season 4.
It's right to my point. So no, I don't do season 4. I come back in season 3, no season 4, and then I'm back in season 5.
Oh, see, I didn't know this. You're in season 3.
Yeah.
What's in season 3?
Mystery Spot.
That's Mystery Spot. Okay. And then season 5 is Changing Channels.
Right.
And were there any others in this point at this?
I don't think so. No.
You're in 3 for the first 5 seasons. You're in 3 episodes.
Pretty sure that's right.
Okay.
Yeah. I think. I should have researched that, but
that's fine. It's fine. We'll ask the guy who actually played the part.
The multitude of things we've said out here that are wrong. Like you said, you announced the death of some actor from Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Yeah, yeah.
Much to the chagrin of the man who's not dead.
Or the tweet we got that said he's actually very much alive.
Yeah.
And doing great. Okay, I know we can talk forever, and we have a whole nother interview to do. But my last question is: you, Richard Speight, at this point, had you directed that movie North Beach?
I had.
Okay, so you have directing sort of in your purview. Did you ever think you'd direct episodic television?
Yeah, I'd hoped. My thought was, you and I are sort of very parallel in our journeys, in that, like, I'd been a regular on shows, I'd been a recurring character on shows, and my thought was, well, one of these shows will last beyond a season or 2 seasons, and when it gets its tailwind, I'll be able to segue into being part of the team that directs that show. That's just always what I thought. I thought, well, I'll end up, The Agency, or the Jericho. One of these shows will continue to go, or some sitcom I was doing, and I'll segue that way. And it was just later, as the years went on, I realized I'm going to have to find a different portal to enter this world, because that doesn't seem to be happening. So yes, my eyes were already on that prize, but not on Supernatural. I mean, certainly not a show that I'd done 1 episode of.
Right. Now, if you could go back from a directing standpoint, is there anything you would have done different with this episode?
Oh, interesting question. I don't think so, only because you kind of live and die by not overthinking the decisions. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I say, it kind of I look at what I did, all pretty crisp, clear decision making going on there. It all works. I would live with it all. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I also think it's so hard to think back to that and go,
sure.
Well, at my age, I'm different. I have a different perspective now. Would I do it differently? I don't know, maybe. But overall, when I watch it, I think, like the show itself, it holds up pretty well. The relationship with the characters and the character execution. So, no, I think I would. I think I'll keep it in the vault as it is.
All right, you heard it here, folks. Rich approves of Rich's episode. Well, Rich, thanks for coming on. It was really a joy having you.
It was great, and you can just send the check to my agent, and they'll send it to me.
We'll take care of all that off mic. All right, thanks, Richard Speight, everybody.
Ahoy, Rich Speight here. Hope you're enjoying the episode. But we got to pull over for a second for some messages.
Early nominating contests build momentum for 2024 contenders seeking the White House. C-SPAN is the place for political campaign enthusiasts, with unfiltered coverage surrounding the early primaries and caucuses, as well as speeches from key battleground states. Whether you're interested in your state's race or want to follow all of the political events, you can get immediate access to what the candidates are saying, plus nominating results in real time with the free mobile app, C-SPAN Now, or watch live on the C-SPAN networks.
Thanks for supporting Supernatural then and now. And now, back to the show.
Wow, Rob, that was a great interview.
Rich,
that was just a great interview.
You were very quiet. You didn't ask any questions.
I was fascinated. I felt like I was a schoolgirl at a JT concert. I just couldn't take my eyes off the screen. He was just so, first of all, you could just swim in those eyes. And secondly,
you can find them.
Yeah, you can certainly swim in that mustache. It was, no, great interview. I was fascinated to watch you do that interview and not throw up in your mouth at all. That was cool to see.
I'm a professional, so I hide that really well. I only did 3 times. No, I really did enjoy. I love you and I love your work, and and you're awesome in this episode. And this is the OG. This is Rich in his very first episode of Supernatural. It's a classic.
Oh, thanks, man. I do think it's fun to go back, and the journey will be fun when we get to your episode as well, to sort of see the origin story of that character and that person in that character.
Yeah.
Because, without question, and this is, someplace we got to get Robert Ulrich on here to talk about the casting process.
Yeah.
But dude, you're perfectly cast in your role. I was perfectly cast in this role.
Yeah.
It's, even when I got it and I realized, I'm not a janitor, I'm this guy. At no point was I like, oh shit, I'm a Boston dock worker. What am I going to do? I don't have a Boston accent. I read this. I'm like, oh, this is my shtick, man. This is where I sing.
Right.
And so it's like, you wonder, like, how did that magic matchup happen? Because it doesn't always work.
Right.
It just doesn't.
Right.
It's funny to me that Bob Singer, who we're going to interview, how he thought I'd be right for this role, given the fact that the pilot we had done together, I played an alcoholic World War II medic.
Wow.
Not the funny guy in the platoon.
Yeah.
Not, it was a very Southern alcoholic medic.
This to me is more what you're really like. I've been the victim of the real life trickster now for about 15 years. But yeah, to me, this is a little bit more what you are, that sort of sly, loving, but sneaky. Well, let's get into that Bob Singer interview, hey?
Let's do it. Here he is, the maestro, Bob Singer.
All right, we're talking about Tall Tales, and we've got, once again, executive producer, director,
showrunner,
and really the heart and soul of Supernatural.
Yeah,
Bob Singer on the show. Bob, hello.
There he is.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Bob. Listen, sorry to waste your time. I know this is kind of a throwaway episode that no one really talks about much. But, here's my first question. Do you remember casting Richard Speight Jr.?
I try to forget that.
Some mistakes live to haunt us.
Richard and I worked on a pilot that I directed before Supernatural called Sam Circus. In addition to Richard really being great in that show, Richard and I really hit it off well, I think.
Still out. Not quite sure.
X Factors out there.
Yeah, it just may be an actor sucking up. I'm not sure if it was that or if he actually really liked me. But in any case, when Tall Tales came up, I thought of Richard, and Richard has a pretty long list of credits, interestingly enough. And it was an easy choice. So we thought he was perfect for it. Yeah. We didn't know it was going to go on for years and years the way it did.
Yeah, had you been able to factor that in.
Wait, so the director of this episode is Bradford May, is that right?
Yeah. And
do you remember what he was like, Rich, working with him?
I do. I don't know how Bradford May had been the producing director on Wildfire, which interestingly enough was Genevieve Padalecki's show that she was the star of for years and years. Bradford May also, his cousin Mike May was the A-camera operator on The Agency, which is a series I did for a couple of years that Miller Tobin directed that we just were talking about. And Bradford May was this big personality, like larger than life guy who I remember his catchphrase was "Ding ding my champions," which I think meant hurry up. I don't really
funny
remember. But to this day, Brad Creaser and some of the lifers would use "Ding Ding My Champion" as a moment to, I think, make fun of that moment. But nonetheless, they remember it.
Wow.
How did you, Bob? How did Bradford May get involved in the show?
Brad, I go so far back with Brad that when I was an associate producer on a movie called Burnt Offerings back in the 70s, I guess, Brad was a camera department guy. He was like the second assistant cameraman on that show. So I knew Brad that far back. Brad did a number of midnight callers for me, even then larger than life, a lot of catchphrases. No cheese ball, not going to shoot any cheese. Ding ding, my champions came later, I guess. But I was that Brad was pretty talented. I think by the time he got to do Supernatural, because I really hadn't worked with him in a number of years, I think he'd gone off the deep end a little bit with his stuff with Ding Ding My Champions. But it was a good episode, and Brad knows what he's doing. But he's he to paraphrase Levon Helm, he's an adult portion.
Fair.
So we're now halfway through season 2, and Bobby Singer has been back for back-to-back episodes, Born Under a Bad Sign and now Tall Tales. Was there a conscious point where you guys were like, hey, we want to keep bringing Bobby back, bringing Jim Beaver back? Was that a conscious thing, or was it just you kind of needed that voice?
Well, I can't think of any of the, whether it was Richard or Jim Beaver or Mark. These were all one-offs to begin with, but whenever Charlie was a good example of that, whenever we had a character that was like a one-off that we thought really scored, and we said, well, we got to find ways to bring those people back.
Chuck, characters like.
Well, yes, sort of, I guess.
Yeah, that's a reach.
Yeah. But, in the case of Jim, who I had worked with many times and was just a reach out for Jim. I think he served a really great purpose in the kind of overarching story of Supernatural, because he kind of came in as this father figure, and it was always good for the boys to have a place to go to. And I think his house was the first permanent set we actually had.
Oh, wow.
I mean, for the first number, until we built the Men of Letters, I think the only permanent set was Bobby Singer's house.
And it really does add such a good element. And I was saying in the last episode that we did that I love his street smarts. Like, you can't pull a fast one by Bobby. Like, in the last episode when Sam goes to his house and Sam's possessed, Bobby immediately gets it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And Jim is, I think about Jim is he's one of those actors, and he was always this way when I worked with him on Reasonable Doubts. It doesn't matter what you give him. Every line is honest. He just has that ability as an actor. Yeah. I mean, he can make a bad line palatable.
Yeah, he does have that grounded everyman sort of, I don't want to say good old boy, but it kind of tips to that direction. Sort of his Middle America roots sort of shine through in a really effective way, I think.
Yeah, he's just honest, I mean, that's such a good quality in an actor. I think, I mean, without blowing smoke up your keisters, you guys have that as well. It just every line comes out honest, and that's always something I look for in actors.
Yeah,
so.
Right, and I think it also for Jim Beaver's involvement as Bobby. He seemed to fill a nice gap in that there's such a missing paternal figure through line in the show that he steps into that role sort of as a surrogate coach or male figure that the boys sort of are wanting.
Yeah, absolutely. And a character that no problem putting them in their place.
Exactly.
The fact that character is called Bobby Singer. I was in Canada directing, and this part came up, and Eric thought it would be cute to call the character Bobby Singer. And I went, oh, God, but then I was saying, all right, it's for one episode. Fine,
Yeah.
It turns out to be what it is. A friend of mine from New York calls me up, and I don't even think he watched the show very much, but he calls me up and he goes, I don't know who you are anymore. You're naming characters after yourself. Really? Who are you?
And by the way, this is the gift that keeps giving, because isn't he also going by Robert Singer in The Boys?
The Boys, yeah.
So this is something that there's a story about something fun that was done to the blackboard in the background of a final scene, and that Standards and Practices had to remove it.
It says something fun you did with the blackboard.
Me?
Well, I don't know. It says you. It's this.
I have a feeling that as a guest star, I probably wasn't doing much fun on the blackboard in the background.
It doesn't sound like a Bob
MO
Singer
is not
move.
to get fired.
Doesn't sound like
I didn't think Bob Singer would have done it, but I wondered if Bob remembered what it was. I don't know.
I don't, but it sounds like Jared. To
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
Totally
It's definitely not the guest star who thinks he's never coming back to go like, you know what I'll do? I'll jerk around and
Yeah.
screw up the scene
Yeah.
for everybody. That'll be hilarious.
Or the executive producer who's not directing the episode. Excuse me, guys.
Exactly.
The standard stuff, the people that standards would catch, it always amazed us. You know, they would come up with stuff that we didn't even realize we had done. Maybe some sort of sexual innuendo that was unintended, and they would flag it.
Really?
Yeah, I mean that job of is I don't know anybody would go into that job. I mean that takes a really different kind of personality.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, basically, it's like the school narc.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not the fun guy. Like, hey, let's invite the standards and practices guy. He'll be hilarious.
Or the parking violation
And they
people.
would have stuff about logos on cars. And we spent more money getting rid of logos on cars. And then they wanted us initially to take the Chevrolet logo off of,
Baby?
And we're going, that's a character. It's a character in the show. So we won that one. But any car company that was not advertising on the CW, they would make us take out the logo on the car.
Wow.
Which of course the visual effects guys always love. Oh, this is an exciting piece.
Yeah, this is sexy.
Yeah.
Can't wait to brag about this one.
I know they have to do
It's
that
funny
with
when
our
they can't.
costumes all the time too, right? A lot of people may not know that, but if it shows like a nice Nike symbol or something, you got to mark that out.
Oh yeah, no, and then they come up with stuff that really we never thought of that. That was what's a sexual innuendo? I go, really?
Cheese sandwich?
Yeah.
You also, Rob brought up that point that when you do that, they say, hey, can you Greek that out? Like, hey, can you Greek out that logo? What did the Greeks do to deserve that? Like, are they known for being a logo-free country? What's going on with that?
I think initially where that came from is that they would take things that there was a logo and then it would kind of alter it to make it look
Greek
like some
symbol,
sort of Greek
right.
writing. So I think that's where that came out of.
Oh wow!
It has evolved into like a Sharpie taking out a swoosh. Like
Yeah.
Right.
It's because the very first
all it
standards and practices guy's name was Johnny Greek.
It might be. You never know.
There was a guy at NBC years ago who was the head of standards and practices. And I did a couple of shows. I met him when I worked at NBC, and then I did a couple of shows for NBC. And he was just hard on, violence and this and that, and this too sexy. It turns out, I won't mention the guy's name, but under a pseudonym, he used to write those dirty novels.
What? Yeah.
He thrust his throbbing member into her awaiting whatever's, and that's what he decided.
That's crazy.
And he was head of standard.
Wait, who's getting the standards and practice guy?
Yeah, was writing under a pseudonym as this like dirty fiction writer.
No wonder he saw something dirty in everything he saw. That's why, because he was filthy.
Oh my God, that's insane.
You can't have those people shake hands. We all know what that means. We do.
Where are you, Rich? It looks like a location place.
It is a location place. Don't all location places have that same like
Sad.
at home feel? I'm in New Orleans, Louisiana, because I'm gonna.
Are you doing a Jensen show?
Do one of the prequels. Yeah.
Oh, great! Well, congratulations.
Thank you very much. We'll see how it goes. Hopefully, I won't ruin it for everybody, so that everybody can come do this job later. It's season 1 show, Bob. Here's a question: when John pitched this show in the script form, was it always sort of a Rashomon vibe? Was it always, well, this is how I saw it, or this is how he saw it? Sort of, people retell their version of the events, and their retelling is always sort of a heightened retelling of the events, like the alien dancing and that kind of thing.
We didn't think of it like that. We just thought it was kind of a cool idea. I don't think we were saying, well, this is our version of Rashomon.
No, sure.
I just think that this is a cool idea with a really cool character.
It certainly leans into the broad in a way that I'm trying to think if the show had done this before. I mean, it's very comedic in its execution.
I think this was the first one that we did that we stepped outside, I guess what you could call our comfort zone, and tried to do something funny and more lighthearted. I mean, there was always this element of danger that we wanted to keep in the show, but this one I think was the first time we said, well, let's have some fun. And it really set the template for shows to come, that we could do that the cast could handle it, and and that we could write that and then be happy with it, and all that sort of followed, whether it was The French Mistake or Changing Channels or any of those, were really, this one started that whole thing, and some of them where we said, well, this will either sink us or really we'll hit a home run. And I think they all hit home runs. All those shows that were like that, And Rich, before you became, Rob, before you became evil, your episodes had a lot of that.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. I feel almost like, Richard's character kind of set the stage and allowed the show to kind of go there and it still work. The show could be wildly funny at times, and I think that's one of the things that was really good about this show. Is that it, like the next episode in this bunch is Roadkill, which then goes very serious and sort of sensitive. So it can kind of go both ways and still work.
Yeah, it opened up a whole world for us. And, without blowing smoke up Richard's behind, I think having an actor like that and, somebody who can play with a twinkle in their eye and just a little bit of malevolent fun really carried that episode to where we would have liked it to be.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Bob. But here's a question for you. So when in watching, we all know, because we all know Jensen and Jared, but Jensen especially has great comic timing. You guys, I assume, were kind of discovering that when you cast this young, handsome guy to play Dean. And as you've done episodes with him in the airplane and all these other episodes where you're discovering his humor. And I would assume that helped open this door too, because you realized, our guys also they won't be left standing here. Like they're good at navigating this world as well. Is that true?
I think, I think the first time we dipped our toe there was in Phantom Traveler, which was the airplane episode, which I directed.
Right.
And you could see that the guys could handle it a lot. And, so it was easier for us to go there. We didn't worry about that.
Right.
But I think this episode was the first kind of full bore, let's really have a lot of fun.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Well, Bob, thanks so much for coming on and talking to us again. Please keep doing this. It really helps to get your words of wisdom around our podcast. And this is especially fun since Richard was actually in the episode.
Yeah, but it's also just like, man, I could get you on here, Bob, and talk about deli sandwiches.
Yeah.
Like, it's just a treat to have a conversation with you, man. Truly.
It's always a pleasure to do this, guys, and since I haven't seen either one of you in person for quite some time.
Yeah.
And I hope we can.
Well, let's change that. When you're back in Southern California
and you're ready,
New Mexico, let us know.
Yeah, always a pleasure to do this. And, Eugenia keeps saying, she says, when am I going to be a guest? And I said, well, I guess when we get the one that you wrote, but that's probably a little bit down the line.
Please give her our best.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks,
okay,
buddy. Great seeing you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hey there, this is Jensen. I hope you're enjoying the episode, but we need to pull over for a second for some messages, and I got to take a leak. Thanks for supporting Supernatural then and now. And now, back to the show.
What a great interview with Bob. I just love having him on.
God, there's nobody cooler than Bob Singer.
He's the best.
Man, he's hilarious. He's funny. I wish people could see, and maybe Patreon will get to see some of the video interviews with Bob, because just his deadpan look before he answers is gold.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's great. And every time I ask him something, there's a part of me that dies a little because I'm like, oh, dear God, I hope this goes over. That one question where he's like, I don't know. I don't know is my answer. I don't know.
Well, how about me? I was like, brought up Rashomon. He's like, it's not like Rashomon. What are you, a moron?
But ironically, it is like Ramadan.
Right. Exactly.
Well, anyway, the interview with Bob was so great, and it made up for the lackluster first interview. But no, it was great. It's great. Big thanks. On the notes here, it says Bob and Rich are the best. And I
Bob
assume
and
that
Rich
means,
are the best. And that's not even written there. Rob just said that from off the top of his head. Thanks, Robbie.
and of course, it's talking about me and you. No, Bob Singer is the best, and you and I are
Rich
just
is
the second.
and Rich is the co-host.
And Rich is a person. All right, well, let's get into the mythology of this episode.
Mythology.
Okay, you may not know this, but tricksters are very common in many cultures and mythologies around the world. Of course, Supernatural fans, and I know you don't know this, but Supernatural fans know about Loki, the Norse god of mischief.
Actually, that's supposed to be the Norse god of mischief.
Oh.
It's a woman who's married
It's a
to
woman-
Mr. Chief.
Oh, okay, mischief, right. So wait, are you when did we start calling you Loki in this?
Not till season 13.
Oh, really?
I mean, I don't remember that. I always thought they called the trickster. I mean, they may have called me Loki when I was off screen.
I feel like in that what you and I call the dark years between episodes 5 and when we came back, for me it was like 10 or 11. I feel like you and I are to ask on stage a lot. People are like, "Well, you were Loki." I feel like that wasn't a new idea in season 13.
I always felt like trickster and Loki are the same thing, right? But
Right, but Loki wasn't said in this episode. I feel like maybe in season 4 or 5 or 3.
it might
sometime.
have been.
Hey, we'll find out.
I know they called me Loki in Hammer of the Gods. Oh, there's another episode he did in season 5.
There you go.
For Hammer of the Gods.
That's what it is. Well,
I know that when I walk in the room, Odin says Loki. So
Okay,
I know that I'm
so
called
this
Loki
is-
there.
These are all of our answers. Our questions are being answered right now. And there are fans that have been screaming at the podcast this whole time going, "No, he did 5 episodes or whatever."
But I'll tell you what, we still could be wrong. Like there could have been
True.
a mention
True.
before that.
Well, you know what I'm not wrong about? That other popular tricksters in literature and mythology include Puck, or Robin Goodfellow from the English folklore and Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream.
Ah, yes. They even use that you can say somebody can be puckish. Doesn't that mean
That's
they're that type of person?
That's right. Or they really like hockey. What's another trickster from,
Well, there's Hermes, or Hermes from Greek mythology.
right? Which is also, I think, an Italian shoe brand or
It
clothing
is
brand.
Hermes. I like
And
my
Japan-
Hermes. Who's the Roman mythology version of Hermes?
They don't talk about him a lot, but it's Eugene. No, I don't know.
Come on. Now I got to get the Google machine out. Mercury.
Mercury.
All right.
In Japan, there's Susanoo, the storm deity in the Shinto religion, is known to prank his siblings.
Is that where we get the female name Susan?
Yeah,
Because look at Susanoo.
I know,
The
Susanoo.
storm deity of the Shinto religion is known to prank his siblings.
Which is kind of New York for saying, like, which Susan are you talking about? Susanoo.
Susan.
Susanoo.
Hey, I like that Susanoo only pranks his siblings.
Yeah, as he should.
So Dave is like, oh, great, my brother Susanoo is coming. Ugh.
That's Davidoo to you. In Nigeria, there is Ishu, who tricked the chief god out of secrets of divination.
Hey, honey, have you seen my secrets of divination? Well, Ishu came by. What? No. God. Crap.
Damn it, Ishu.
Thanks a lot, Susanoo.
The Raven is a trickster in Haida-Lore, which is an indigenous American tribe in the Pacific Northwest.
Right. Did you know that famed psychologist Carl Jung believed that tricksters were part of a universal collective unconscious due to their frequency across cultures?
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. So
Carl had
maybe
a
you
lot
really
of
are.
highfalutin thoughts that he liked to share with people.
Yeah. And in Los Angeles, they believe that the trickster is an actor named Richard Speight Jr., whose sole purpose was to cause grief to his friend Rob.
I was put here to mess with God. That's it.
All right, fun facts.
Fun facts. Fun, so fun.
A purple nurple contains 1 ounce of coconut rum, 1 ounce of triple sec, 1 ounce blue Curacao liquor, and 2 ounces of cranberry juice. You know, that's one thing that we didn't talk about is that fun little story about him doing shots with the girl.
Yeah.
And then in the other version, she's completely different, and Sam's really emotional in Dean's version.
It's super funny. And when we used to do conventions early on, purple nurples were always offered at the bar.
Is that right?
Like they were told to sort of have purple nurples on hand.
Oh,
'Cause it was
funny.
a cocktail drink that would be readily available for people. And
that was really funny. The alien was really funny, and the guy dancing with the alien, hilarious. Yeah. Maitreya Fedor who plays the alien, and she played Tyler Thompson in Playthings. All the aliens were played by children with comically large prosthetic hands.
That's hilarious.
Not children who already have large prosthetic hands. They were given large prosthetic hands. They weren't cast. I got this great girl. She's awesome. She's 7 years old, adorable, and she's got these huge prosthetic hands. The episode features the Weekly World News. A tie-in issue was published at the time of the episode airing, and it included an important fact. A steak must be dipped in the blood of a trickster's victim in order for it to kill him.
Really?
So you're telling me that there was the real Weekly World News published an issue at the same time?
I don't know. This is news to me. How would you get a filet mignon dipped in the blood of a victim and use it to kill?
Different kind of steak. Different kind of steak.
Oh.
This is
Oh.
I didn't realize Weekly World News was that much in the fiction world.
I just remember the Bat Boy one. That was the one that always, Bat Boy being on that thing.
Yeah, I guess now when you look at it, it's like, well, yeah, why wouldn't that be fake? I know you don't know this fun fact. Technically, this is the first appearance of an angel, a.k.a. Trickster, a.k.a. Gabriel, in the series.
Oh, good point, because later on I reveal myself to be Gabriel. So I beat Castiel to the punch. I'm the first angel.
Yeah.
Dude.
So take that, Misha Collins.
Bragging rights. That plus a couple of bucks will get me a mug of coffee. You know what I mean?
That's right. Well, listen, I've been looking forward to doing this episode for a while, and it is, in all seriousness, fun to get your origin story and how you wound up really here doing this podcast.
Yeah, I know, dude. It's really crazy. I was texting my buddy Sam Klein the other day, and I was telling him what we're doing. And he's like, dude, did you ever think that going to do a guest spot? And by the way, I'm doing this podcast about my role as the trickster in the first episode of Supernatural I ever acted in season 2, while sitting in a hotel room in New Orleans preparing to direct episode 7 of season 1 of The Winchesters, a spinoff of Supernatural, crazy. 17 years later. Like, it's kind of crazy.
No one ever could have guessed that.
While doing a podcast that's a rewatch podcast about Supernatural. I mean, it's pretty nutty how much this is a part of our lives, No,
it's true. And we never, you never could imagine on that plane ride where you're going, oh, I guess I'm more than just a janitor. Yeah. Fast forward 17 years. And here we are.
And here we are, man.
Well, thanks again to Bob. And thank you to you all, people, for listening to our little show here.
You know what? They're supporting they're doing a great job supporting our podcast. They're listening. Really, but you know what? They could take it up a notch. You know how Bobby?
How, Rich?
Join Patreon.
Yes, you could. You can join our Patreon page if you'd like. And you get a lot of extra bonus stuff over there. So check that out. And in the meantime, just thanks for being here with us. We love doing the show.
We appreciate you.
This episode of Supernatural, Richard Speight Jr. stars as the Trickster in Tall Tales.
All right, Trey, play the dramatic music.
Richard Speight Jr.
Firework noise. Thank you, Trey. Jared Padalecki is featured as Sam Winchester. Jensen Ackles as Dean Winchester.
Guest stars include Jim Beaver, Barclay Hope, and David Tom.
The episode was written by John Shaban and directed by Bradford May.
Editing by David Ekstrom. Music by Christopher Lennertz.
Executive produced by Eric Kripke and our guest, Robert Singer.
The original broadcast of this episode featured the song Walk Away by the James Gang.
This episode originally aired on February 15th, 2007.
This episode of Supernatural Then and Now was hosted and executive produced by Richard Speight Jr. and Rob Benedict.
Produced by Stephen Hine, written by Stephen Hine and Haida Hulscher.
And edited and associate produced by Trey Booty. Oh, what's up, Booty?
Music provided by Tim Wynn.
The episode was recorded with the help of Sonic Fuel Studios.
This podcast is from Story Mill Media.
Follow the podcast on Instagram and Twitter at SPN Then and Now.
And join our Patreon
at patreon.com/SPN Then and Now.
Yeah, it's so weird to watch that happen. Like, it's so strange to watch humanity fall apart like that. It's like one of those sequences in a zombie movie when people start going nuts and fighting over like a blouse in Target and beating each other senseless. Yeah. Like, it's so bizarre.
Oh, God. Yeah. The first thing they did was shave everything off.
Story
Story Mill Media.